To China now, where 1.4 billion people are preparing to ring in the Lunar New Year this weekend. Lockdowns, mass testing, quarantine and restrictions on movement have all taken their toll on the world's second biggest economy over the past year. But with the abrupt end of the government's zero COVID policy, the economy is finally taking off. So will the Year of the Rabbit augur better things? Stephen McDonald reports from Beijing.
China's rapid reopening after the sudden abandonment of zero COVID has triggered an explosion in coronavirus infections. But it's also prompted a new wave of optimism that this huge economy could pick up quickly, and that this could prompt foreign companies to stay in China rather than move elsewhere. Wang Huiyao has connections with senior Communist Party officials, and he thinks foreign investment is set to improve here dramatically.
I'm sure this year, 2023 GDP will double the one of 2022, so which means the investment, foreign investment, I would say not double, but at least I can imagine a 50% increase.
Lockdowns and other restrictions meant many foreign businesses didn't survive the COVID crisis.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. I was here for 10 years. It was just after the 10th anniversary of us taking the lease on that we actually did close. And we decided that you can't just keep throwing good money after bad, because we can't,
Steve Goody's bar was popular with expats and local customers alike, but he says it was impossible to pay rent and wages with constant closures. Neighbouring restaurants also closed at the same time as his business a couple of months ago.
A bad sign.
Yeah. So imagine how many empty rooms there are like this in Beijing right now, which used to be bars and restaurants and things.
China's reputation as a place to do business took a beating during the pandemic, with supply chains at times grinding to a halt. Wang Huiyao says the government will now be working its tail off to attract foreign companies again.
Here, everything is smooth, transportation, labor, raw materials, infrastructure, and then also China has set up 21 free economic zone now.
One thing that is certain is that hundreds of millions of Chinese consumers are out and about again. China may have its problems, but it also has a huge and expanding middle class, which is hard for companies to ignore. Stephen McDonald, BBC News, Beijing.
Well, earlier I spoke to Chang Lu, who's the Managing Director for Greater China at The Economist Group, and I began by asking her how important the middle class is for the rebound in China.
That's a very good question. The growing middle class is certainly one of the key defining sort of themes and new economic structure for China, but there are both upside risks and downside risks. But I'd like to first pick up on what Stephen and Huiyao was saying about China post-COVID and its reopening. And really, China's reopening after the zero COVID policy will be the biggest economic event in 2023. And this will bring significant impact to the world, from commodities to supply chains, from central banks' policies to countries that will rely heavily on China on investment, goods and services. So this will be bringing significant changes to the world. At the same time, so we at the Economist Intelligence Unit are looking at China growing at 5.2% GDP growth this year. There will be upside risk and also downside risk. And there will be two key elements to watch. For one is property market, because this is very important as how much it contributes to the economic growth. But the government will try to have a very calculated and balanced act in between, because it certainly does not want to overheat the economy and property market again. At the same time, this year's economic growth will be very, very important right after post-COVID. And the government wants to make sure that the economic growth will be the key fundamental sort of factor that underpins the legitimacy of the government and of the party. The other important factor to be watching for is a consumer and consumer spending and private consumption.